Hi, welcome to another episode of When It Matters podcast from Meshed. Today, I'm Mike. I'm guest hosting the podcast. I'm one of the founding engineers here at Meshed. And joining me are Tom and Ed from Asteroid, an AI agentic browser platform we use very regularly. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All
It's
right.
very exciting.
Awesome. And it's all of our first time ever doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see. We'll see how
We'll
it
see how
goes.
it goes.
All right. Well, I think for the audience, the main thing they're probably thinking is, who are these guys? I've never heard them before. So maybe we start with a little bit of a round of intros. I'll just kind of start with, what brought you guys both to where you are today? What made you want to get into software, AI, makes you what you are? Ed, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so we're both founding engineers at Asteroid, which is a browser agent company that's kind of main goal is to automate back office tasks to help other companies kind of build out the products they want to build, but also to help alleviate some of kind of the wasted time in kind of just sitting in front of a computer, filling in forms, kind of testing interfaces, that kind of stuff. More specifically, how I kind of got to where I am today. So I went to University of Warwick, studied computer science. I knew from quite early on that I wanted to be a software engineer. I just love building things and solving problems. And then I joined a company called Netcraft, which we do cybersecurity. And then someone who invited me to Netcraft, kind of referred me to Netcraft, left and started his own startup, which was Joe Hewitt, our CTO and co-founder of Asteroid. And he invited me to join the company. And I was kind of quite keen on the idea. It's always something I wanted to do, was to join a startup. So I've been at Asteroid now for about 8 months full time. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And Tom, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I suppose my route into software was a little bit less conventional. So I didn't go to university. I got an internship with my previous company called Wireless Logic. I think, what was that, about 7 years ago, nearly to the day. Worked there for 6.5 years, up from kind of development support, software engineer, senior engineer, tech architect, lead. Um, and yeah, then so I've known Joe, our CTO, co-founder, for practically my whole life, and I suppose I would somewhat credit him with with driving me to get into engineering. Um, so yeah, we've always been good friends. We did applied to YC together last year, I think it was, and didn't get in. So I carried on with my job at Wireless Logic, and then a couple of months later, he phoned me up and was like, "Oh, I've got into EF, Entrepreneurs First, which is the first accelerator that Asteroid went through. It's where Joe and David, our CEO, met, and then went into YC. And then back in December, I think, I started kind of doing some contracting for them, just on the side, bit of beer money or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think in May or something, they offered me the job. So I've now been there full time for 2-3 months. In fact, that maths doesn't line up, does it?
So like 3 months, yeah.
Something like 3 months. So there was a notice period and all that.
I think what's quite interesting that Tom and I came very different routes to where we are. So we're both founding engineers, but I went the more traditional route of going to university, where you kind of like learn kind of the more academic side of software engineering, whereas Tom came the route of working 7 years in an established software company, and so he's got all the kind of on the ground, more like actually learning in a company experience. So we both have kind of different perspectives of how things should work, which works quite well for Asteroid. And it's quite interesting how, like, yeah, doesn't really matter the route you take. We both ended up at the same position in life, working for Asteroid. So yeah, I always find that quite interesting.
Yeah, I find that with software just in general. It's always very cool to kind of see the different routes you can get to doing a similar type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the, different experiences it brings together, right? Especially for a startup that needs to have, lots of different functions, come from different directions. I'm I'm sure there's probably similar background story for everyone at the company, has that experience to pull from as challenges present themselves.
I think yeah, we end up complementing each other quite well in that. Yeah, but because of the different experiences.
Nice,
So,
nice. Well, let me do a little quick intro on myself here. Obviously we're chatting a little bit before the recording started, but yeah, I also started with Mesh just earlier this year, back in April. So I think I've just a little over 6 months now. But I've had a long career in software development. I had the more traditional route of I went to, probably haven't heard of it, University of British Columbia, or sorry, no, British Columbia Institute of Technology, BCIT, back in Canada, BC. So I did that for a couple years, started working, degree part-time, kept doing that for a few years. And it'd take a while to list off all the companies I worked at, but let's just say, various startups, some small places, some big places. I've worked across education technology, Web3, game development, consulting, and of course, most recently, AI. Always been very big fan of AI. I was dabbling with it back in the early days of OpenAI, before it was ChatGPT, when
yeah.
it was just API you could hit and see what came of it. It's been really fun just, seeing that industry really take off over the past few years here. So maybe I'll kind of ask my first question, which is, each of you guys work at a pretty, I imagine, active AI company, both the tools you use and what you're working on building. So maybe share, what originally sparked your interest in AI, that, brought you to where you are.
That is a really good question.
I
I might
remember,
defer to Ed first.
yeah. I remember my first use of like being amazed by AI was years ago. It was when I was probably 16, and that was kind of when the hot topic was like CNNs and stuff like that. And I remember my first use of AI was actually me training my own model to identify different Lego bricks. So you'd give it like an image of a Lego brick, and then it would predict. And I was amazed how kind of this very quick thing I hacked up using TensorFlow back in the day, um, works. And it was like kind of groundbreaking to me that you can kind of embed knowledge into something that's like a black box. You don't really need to have to go in there and like write lines of codes to do different rules. You can just kind of train it, and then you get a working model. That's kind of what originally sparked me with AI. Ever since, I've kind of always wanted to work in a company that primarily uses AI. But I think like Asteroid is really kind of invigorating that. It's like we're a purely AI focused company, and all the tooling we use, like our code editors, kind of the way we plan building new features, we all supplement that with AI tooling, and it's just you're able to move a lot faster, and it's quite amazing how much you can really use AI now in even from building company, the tooling for building a company. There's a lot of avenues you can go down.
Nice.
For sure. I'm trying to think what sparked my interest. Probably trip to Cornwall we went on might have been it. I think that was just pre Chat GPT, was it?
Yeah. It's before
Or
it really took off. Before your
before it
average
really
Joe
took.
was using, like, now they call it chat nowadays, don't they? That's kind of
Yeah.
the common used term. Before that was really a thing, and we were
Yeah, we're playing with, they're basically just playing with the OpenAI API back when it was I think it had text completion. So before they even put, I think, multiple messages from memory into the API, it was just like it would extend what you've put into it, and it was like. I think one of the ideas we came up with was basically how do you use this to plagiarize
Yeah.
particular things, and it was a bit of a hackathon, bit of fun. But I guess that's where I kind of saw it maybe becoming a big thing, um, and sparked interest. And I think from there's been loads of side projects before, eventually ending up at Asteroid.
Oh, I got to say, my first forte into AI is not as exciting as your guys's. I think it started with a friend of mine had first discovered that early text compiler and started just making raps with it. So he sent me his rap lyrics on WhatsApp, and I'm like,
Amazing.
"Wow, did you write all these?" He's like, "No, check this out." and then it started from there. Okay, cool. Well, maybe let's talk a little bit about, what it's like working at Asteroid and building what you guys build. Um, Now, obviously you guys mentioned how you found your way to Asteroid, but, being early team members, being in the origin genesis time of Asteroid, what's kind of the origin of the company itself from your perspective? You guys mentioned you both started pretty recently, but obviously it sounds like you've been keeping tabs with everyone even
Yeah.
before your start, and obviously there as things are coming together. So maybe share with us, what is the origin story of Asteroid?
I'd, I'm not sure. I could probably speak for the founders, so for Ed and Joe, in that they met. So met in EF, and EF is an accelerator you go through with, as far as I can work out, you go as a motivated individual, but with no co-founder and not really an idea you're married to. And the idea is that you meet someone there and come up with an idea. So initially, initially it wasn't even called Asteroid. I think it was called Entropy, but that quickly changed. And initially, it was due to be a what's the word, like a guardrails system for AI agents to stop them doing things that you didn't want them to do. It's non-deterministic. It's unpredictable. Da, 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 da. So that was the initial idea, but then what they realised is actually no one was really building AI agents, and so it's going to be hard to sell a guardrail system um, to people who don't even have the thing that it's for, which is, I think, how they ended up settling on the browser agent idea. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think one of the things Joe mentioned the other day to us was that if you've tried to sell your product to all the other people in your cohort who are building they're your target audience, they're your target customer, and they say, yeah, but we're not really ready for this, then it's probably a problem, because those people they're already in contact with them, you're on the same boat, they're going to be like quite empathetic. So I think they realized very quickly that the kind of the supervision side of things was probably not the way to go. um, and then I think they noticed, so how they kind of got into browser agents was around the time that they started YC. So they started YC with the original idea, and then about a couple of weeks into YC, OpenAI released their computer use models, which is a model designed for interacting with browsers and with desktops. So it's trained specifically on images, screenshots of browsers, and then kind of what actions should an AI take next. And that was kind of released around the time. So then I think they were thinking of pivoting, and then they noticed that this was released, and they gave it a go, and they saw an avenue in which browser agents were going to be a much more feasible product, something that was actually something you could use now. And they kind of pivoted and went all in on that, and that's kind of the how Asteroid as a browser agent company was kind of formed. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible hearing kind of the journey of, figuring out what was that exact fit someone's looking for to help them out. And I can say to us using it at Meshed, it definitely hits that sweet spot that we've been seeking as well. And I realized too, maybe I should have asked this at the beginning a bit. For the average layman who just casually kind of glances at AI, maybe uses Chat GPT from time to time, um, what is Asteroid? How would you describe Asteroid as a platform, as a product to, just an average user?
Yeah. So Asteroid is a end-to-end platform that allows you to automate basically anything, any interaction activity you would do on the web. So we're focused on kind of the browser ecosystem. So let's say it's filling in a form. So you've got a bunch of data in one format and you want to input it onto a form of some sort. Or maybe it's testing very high level kind of websites to make sure things are still working properly. Or whether it's like scraping data. So and all of these solutions, all of these problems had a solution. They had a kind of a go-to golden path on how you'd solve them before browser agents. But like the reason you would move to using browser agents for them is you've got this more non-deterministic capabilities of being able to respond to changes in a website. So like your traditional scraping tools, if let's say the website suddenly went under complete rebrand, your traditional deterministic scrapers would fail. And that's kind of one of the kind of advantages of using browser agents. So yeah, it's like kind of the Asteroid focuses more on the end to end. So someone can come to our platform without any knowledge on how AI works, and they can build a full end to end browser agent that you can run as many times a day as you want, repeatably with different input data, then like do something with the output data. So we're not really focusing on kind of your a company, like you're not kind of your one use case thing. Asteroid's more for your kind of like when you want to run something multiple times, because we provide a full infrastructure to do that, so you don't have to build that in house. That's kind of what a lot of the feedback we get from customers is that if they had to build this internally, it would take them years to build, plus it would cost a lot, and they just don't have the time. They're within maybe a month, they want to fully integrate with the browser agent.
I was gonna, yeah, to couple with the non-determinism, the deterministic alternative somewhat requires a software engineer, or at least someone quite technical. Like a web scraper, I don't think non-technical people are going to be able to use. And one of the, I guess, big benefits of Asteroid is that hopefully, if we do our jobs well enough, people who are non-technical can come along and integrate whatever workflows they need to without having to hire a software engineer.
That was a really good sales pitch. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. From Mesh's perspective, I think we originally heard about Asteroid on Y Combinator. It somehow came through our Slack channels one day, and yeah, we've been impressed with it right from the get go. A bit on our context for what we did before Asteroid and what we do now with it is we had the same kind of challenge you described that your customers were facing before they found Asteroid. We are an insurance platform. What we try to do different is where can we apply technology and AI in the traditional broking process. So there's lots of areas, but one of the biggest time sinks that we found was, as an insurance broker, you're getting your quote information. You're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to give the best price, the best coverage for the customer. So typically a broker will go to, multiple different insurers, multiple different web portals, put in the info, figure out who's given the best quote, relay that data back to the customer. And then it's a, continuous process of finding it, re-entering data in portals, getting a new quote, and of course going to different providers. And we experimented with building our own in-house ones to start. We did like a combination of playwright scripts, scraping the DOM to figure out, okay, what's the right choice that makes sense in these drop downs. I'm sure you guys have all dabbled with those same elements in your quest building Asteroid. And although we got it there, it's the time to build it for a new portal, right? Everyone's got different sites. Sometimes pages behave differently. And I think what really impressed us about Asteroid was, I think at some point you guys hooked us up with a trial or built like a bit of a prototype for us, but it was the speed at which it came together. I can say from being the guy who has built a lot of these automations, easily would take me maybe a full week if I'm heads down focused to get like a new portal. I think the first one, our CTO had like a version up and running in like 45 minutes. It was insanely fast. And, just that ability to kind of, promoting the product a bit, but, very slick interface, manage your prompts, really just see how one bit is flowing to the next bit. I think just that nice presentation alone made it so much easier to think through the headspace involved with crafting these. And then, yeah, just everything all together helped us build a lot faster. So, yeah, I'd say, in the months since we've been utilizing it, more and more of our platform has leveraged Asteroid. And I use your guys' platform every day and continuously impressed. Lots of new updates too. Yeah. Yeah, some weeks I log on, I look at the change log, and for the team size you guys are, I don't know how you do it. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Coffee, I think, is
Yeah.
the answer to that. A lot of
Coffee.
coffee.
Coffee, and just take sleep out. You can get, two full work days in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sales pitch was probably better than ours, to be honest.
Um, well, obviously Mesh, I mentioned we use it to help us across insurance portals. But you guys obviously work with a lot of different customers, a lot of different areas. Not everyone's in insurance. Maybe share a bit, how do your other customers leverage Asteroid in their ways?
So we have like quite a wide range of kind of, there's like one axis to think of it like is you've got people who are using it as kind of part of building their product. So like Meshed, you're using us as a kind of an infrastructure provider to supply you with browser agents that you use within your products. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of
Yeah.
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 Whereas you have other customers who are kind of using it as more of their, maybe it's like a tool on the side. So it's like the end user would never kind of trigger a browser agent to run, but they might be using it for like scraping data that then supplements their product. And like you do also get people who use it for kind of your more like end user task. So I I had a use case myself for using Asteroid, which was I had a fridge being delivered, and there was no way of me receiving any notification on my phone or anything about what time it would arrive. So it's one of those tracking sites that just you had to be on the site to know. So I used Asteroid to quickly build an agent. It took me about 10 minutes that would continuously go to the website every so often on a schedule. And then if it noticed a change in the delivery status, now it's going to be here within 30 minutes, I would get a notification. And that's kind of your other extreme of a use case, which is like your individual user. But yeah, like our like more B2B customers are anything from like medical to like kind of filling in forms for um, clinical kind of things. We've got customers using it for UI testing, which is like an interesting one. It's one we didn't really see would happen, but with kind of your traditional UI to end-to-end testing, you're kind of scoped within the context of the platform you're testing. Whereas what Asteroid enables you to do is to do more of a full usability test. So if you, let's say, have a form that a user fills in, and then you want to go and test that in your internal dashboard is updated to match, and then you might want to maybe cause a side effect and you want to check that the main users page is updated, Asteroid provides that capability, whereas a lot of existing tools, you can't really do that. So there's like heaps of use cases we're finding more and more every day. Scraping of sites that you've never seen before is a big use case. So we've got customers who are kind of looking in that kind of area. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go with Asteroid.
There was one interesting one around our product hunt launch where someone set the agent off listening to a load of drum and bass on YouTube, which was, yeah, quite interesting. So we do have some obscure ones as well.
Who knows why they wanted to do that?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's cool with a platform like that too. Of you build it, but you never know what the end user's going to do with it. But the possibilities are endless. I can say too, I've also just I don't have anything like automatically set up, but I have used it a little bit for that usability testing as well, just because it lets you, send a prompt as if it was just you're telling somebody during a test to do it, and you can see how it performs. So yeah, lots of application. Well, obviously current customers using it, finding their place for it. If you're a small business right now and you're thinking of, AI agents, AI browser agents, how would you tell them to kind of get started with something like that?
So yeah, there's kind of like a almost proof of concept period for everyone. So it's difficult, especially if you're not aware of what's going on in the industry, and you can't expect your everyone at every company, especially in the kind of procurement area, to know can a browser agent do this. So like what we find is a lot of our kind of initial touch points with new potential customers is can we actually do this? And we kind of get a very quick understanding if we can and the limitations. However, because the company is still so early, we are able to very quickly build out and improve our product to solve the problems that our customers might have that we haven't catered for yet. So things like the scheduling system, we didn't originally have that. You had to manually trigger an agent, but that was requested by a user because they didn't want to have to kind of integrate the platform with too many other providers. They wanted us in-house to have a kind of a way of automatically triggering agents. And also like the capabilities of the agents. So we added Google Sheets support, native Google Sheets support, because a customer needed to be able to view and edit Google Sheets. So at the moment, we don't see like a big concern with like a task not being able to be automated via a browser agent. But there is still that like you initially, when they come to an Asteroid and they want to say, can we automate this task? You want to kind of give them the expectation of like, yeah, is this a solvable problem?
Yeah, you kind of start off with like, I don't know, if we get one of those requests, it might often be a look around the room. Oh, can we do this? And then we'll ask each other. But yeah, most of the time, eventually we get there, um, and are able to, yeah, support these workflows.
Yeah, just think of how I would answer this question. I'd probably say the same thing. Like at the end of the day, it starts with what are they even trying to achieve, right? Is it even possible? Can a person do it? Because I'd say, yeah, if a person can do it, sure enough, an AI agent could probably do it too.
And I think that the importance there is when you're comparing to a human doing this workflow, the workflows you're trying to kind of automate is setting the expectations. So a human who's been doing this workflow for years is probably going to be very quick at it. They're going to have a lot of kind of knowledge that they might not immediately know that they have, but on the tasks, like how to respond to kind of, I mean, the general task of input data being one thing and then kind of deducing what that correlates to with like maybe a select drop down in a form. So there's like always that kind of, you got to understand how much knowledge from the use the if you assume a human's doing this task originally, are we able to encompass that knowledge that they have about the task into a browser agent? And like that's more of the like, you'll often get queries from customers like, why doesn't it know that it has to input it this way? But it's like, well, if you put a human in front of this who've never seen the form before, they probably wouldn't know either. So it's about like, yeah, ensuring that the expectations are known, that you kind of got to take the human knowledge of the task, put it into our kind of agent builder, and then more often than not, it will be able to do the task as you kind of expect it to run.
Yeah, I've had that same experience working with insurance brokers. You don't really realize, I don't think they realize too, just in any field, how much knowledge is just internal
Mm-hmm.
from, years of either working in the space or just, filling out the same forms until it's like, okay, give it to something that's never seen it before. It's a really good kind of rubber ducking of your current process. Um, so yeah, a bit of a segue to my next question is, in your journey building AI features for real users, what are some of those biggest challenges or technical challenges you've come up against?
Personally, it's kind of making sure stuff is as close to 100% as you can get it. You could get a pretty good agent that works, I don't know, 60, 70% of the time, but we are trying to drive it to be as reliable as possible. And as you go kind of into those last few percent, um, is where the complexity shoots up. So having to a lot of context management is kind of a key one, which I imagine Ed will be able to speak a little bit more about. Um, but yeah, the nitty gritty details, I think, is where the difficulties are.
I think to expand on what Tom was saying there about this like 1 to 2%, almost you have the same problem as kind of the embedding human knowledge, is that your definition of success, then you really have to refine it. So there's been like classic problem in AI, which is kind of this idea of like the score function, right, or the goal of an AI, and your initial ideas of like how would you describe the goal, fill in the form, but then the AI will fill in the form, say it's worked, but like it might have filled in the wrong fields. Then you say make sure you fill in the form with the correct fields, and then maybe it does that, but maybe it went a different branch this time. It's like defining the goal defining even what success means is often like something that's tricky, and that's not a capability, like a problem with the capabilities of the agent. It's that humans have this, and especially someone experienced with the application you're automating, humans have that knowledge of what success means. So when you're chasing down that kind of really high percentage accuracy, it's really important that you know actually what does success mean, and to validate throughout the workflow that you've not deviated from that. um, so yeah, you can often get like something that we really push for is um, an agent giving false negatives is like not too much of a problem for whilst you're building or like trialing out productionizing a workflow. But the false positives are like a huge problem, especially when you're dealing in like high risk environments where submitting a patient's details wrong or giving the wrong quote for a insurance, in the case of meshed, could actually have severe consequences. And if you have no observability that it failed, there's nothing you can really do unless you manually go through all the executions, even the ones that said they were successful. So evaluation of the workflows being run and ensuring that you never do false positives, you have a lot of bias against doing false positives is really crucial, especially in the agent building phase, to know that, yeah, there's not some error that you've missed and the AI has kind of self-determined it was successful, even though it wasn't.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
like a big complication we have, and like something that we've been really trying to battle. And we've implemented features like evaluations, um, and kind of scratch pad and stuff like that, so that it can really strongly reinforce its decision whether it's successful or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I obviously that's what I deal with as well. That's you mentioned earlier that, that last little percentage is often the most complex, and the difference between saying, yeah, this thing is, full ready for the wild, throw anything you got at it versus, hey, take it easy, we're, still working on it. Yeah, I experienced the same thing too. When building agents for our brokers, where we've kind of come around this challenge is not so much the agent, but more of like the data we have, because we, obviously, agents only going to work as well as the data that you provide it with. So the way, in our setup, our end users are our internal insurance brokers, and so they have direct ability to trigger the agent and everything from our platform. But the way we sort of position it is trigger it, and based on your data or some defaults we're going to make, this is going to be a best attempt to fill it out. And we find, hey, even if it's not 100% perfect, they can at least see where they may be going wrong in their data collection, and it helps them go back and revise things. But yeah, it's always chasing that perfection. But I'd say it's pretty good most of the time. You were touching on it a little bit there with, how do you mitigate some of these challenges, right? I think it's the overall, what kind of guardrails or human in the loop kind of touch points do you have? What sort of tips do you have for someone that's, working with Asteroid, working with these agentic browser agents, on how they can mitigate facing these issues?
So I touched on it a bit about the goal or the success criteria for your agent. The more detail you can embed there, the better, because your agent, you wanna almost constrain your agent into either being absolutely certain it succeeded or fail, right? Because again, it's like about that kind of being able to observe the failures and then resolve any side effects they might have caused, or if it's in the building stage, fixing your agent. So I think knowing exactly what the actual goal of your agent here and what is the success criteria, our agents will be able to kind of deduce, what do you probably mean by this. Like if you just say fill the form in, it probably knows you want it to be filled in correctly, and if you didn't provide data, it's probably going to complain that you didn't provide data. But to most of our like use cases, customers want more certainty, and then even like sacrifice a bit of the non-determinism for the kind of certainty of what happened. um yeah, I think that's like a kind of a critical piece of like our traditional iterations of building agents. Customers will be like, yeah, it failed, or it succeeded when it should have failed. It's like, well, we never actually specified that that was a goal of your agent. So you go back, you iterate on it, you specify this is also something, maybe it's like a sub goal or something like that. um So yeah, it's really important to be like know exactly what you want the agent to perform.
I think on that as well, one of our customers uses us to basically book medical appointments, and so that's one of the super crucial ones. Like if we say that that has reported success and it actually hasn't, someone's not going to get a doctor's appointment, and that can be very bad. So I think in those workflows we've got a feature called a selector transition, and that basically, as Ed said, trades the non-determinism a little bit, but basically checks the HTML on the page for an element which is only available when the form really is submitted. Um, and so for those workflows, like yes, you know, if the page changes, they are going to break, but does it change that often versus the extra safety of that? And yeah, I think on basically all of theirs, they've got those transitions to ensure that their form has been submitted properly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is also a challenge I face too with trying to get insurance quotes. And one of the strategies I found using Asteroid is typically I'll have two agents. I'll have one dedicated to kind of filing the quote, determining did this get to the end, did I see a results page with the right information, and then I'll have a second gather agent that kicks off. And even though the first agent can see that information, the second one's the one that goes in there to gather it. So in that case, if the second one makes it to the end, I've now had two that have basically said, yeah, we got some kind of outcome. There's something to gather. So yeah, it's, at the end of the day, redundancy and double checking is, the same level a person could achieve, right? But yeah, it's a tricky one to, again, that final percentage to always get it. It's a tough one to perfect. So, kind of thinking forward on things, you guys obviously, working in the here and now of it. What do you see as the next big frontier in browser automation? Maybe what are the biggest unsolved challenges of Asteroid that you guys are working towards?
So I think the area that we see and the kind of the gap is that at the moment onboarding customers, um, you've got to sit down in front of our platform and you've got to kind of with a browser build out your agent, and we've released some features like being able to edit your graph live that helps with that. But still, let's say you've got a task that you produce one agent for, and then but now you kind of want to automate it so that it builds new agents on the fly that have maybe slight modifications to that kind of template agent you have. Um, but let's say like you so that's one of the issues, right? Is like the scalability of Asteroid is we can't be self-serve like serving all of our customers. It's got to be somewhat self-serve. So allowing individual users to be able to build their agents and then to scale to more agents is kind of the big breakthrough. And I think with that, it's confidently building agents that will work with like all the tooling. So there's like loads of tooling we can add on top. So that's like AI tooling, so that users don't really need to know the nitty gritty about. So Asteroid's platform is graph based, but like if users didn't have to know, then they need to add a selector transition here. They can kind of just use it like you would ChatGPT, right? You just say, build me an agent that does this, and it kind of builds that itself. Then that's kind of a critical part. And then maybe Tom can touch a bit on the kind of the deterministic stuff and kind of the self-healing side.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess here you mentioned playwright scripts, Mike, and we yeah, that have, I'm sure you've seen it, a feature to be able to bake in the playwright script into our agents, and that's great for bits of workflow that can be deterministic, or even with like a slight branching factor, but not a mega high branching factor. The problem is non-technical people typically won't know how to write a playwright script. And so something we've kind of been experimenting with recently is self-generating those. So we've got at the moment a node that will go through with AI, and at the end it will generate you a script, so that the next time you run the execution, it will use that script. And I guess the benefit of that is it's way quicker, because you're not having to call out to a language model for each step you want to make. The downside is it can break. And so there's kind of benefits and downsides to using it. If I'm honest, at the moment that's out, but probably not quite where we want it to be. So we're still kind of iterating on that at the moment, and the idea is that hopefully that becomes good enough so that the end user doesn't need to know or care that it's Playwright. We probably, or we may or may not even use Playwright by then. Um, but that kind of automating and abstracting away from the user, I think, is something we're really going after.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it will make our workflows quicker, more deterministic when we want it, hopefully far more reliable. So yeah, that's I guess part of the path we're chasing, which kind of somewhat aligns with the, I'd say heavily aligns with the idea of making the building easier. I guess the quicker we can get more, I don't know, people using it and more workflows, and more executions, kind of the better. And I think the path we see towards that is probably the ease of building.
Yeah.
I think.
I was gonna say it's funny because like when I've utilized the Playwright scripts, it's actually more so been that the insurer portals that I'm using are actually not that well built websites,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm using them to try to course correct a bug that possibly happens that the agent's like, hey, what's going on? I can't click this thing, or it needs like a field blurred or unblurred or something to that effect. So yeah, lots of application. You can fill in those little cracks.
I do. I don't know if we should be publicly talking about what you're currently working on, but
We
I think
can.
what you are currently working on will probably help Mike with that problem.
Yeah, no, I think we can share about it. So yeah, what we realized is that fully you generate a playwright script of like almost like a optimized version of the AI actions that have been performed. That's good, but you still need that level of like failure handling and falling back to AI where possible. So kind of the next things we've been exploring, we're seeing some promising results already, is kind of this idea of instead of your execution kind of fully focusing on just building running the execution once, an execution is more running cached bits of tooling so that it can ideally use all the tools it's already built that are bespoke for that workflow, run them, and in the most optimal case, the workflow is just basically fully run fully run deterministically almost via just some cache scripts. However, the you have that fallback to AI to improve on that tooling that it's built. So it's kind of this idea of like self-healing is kind of what the industry is calling it. And there's other people kind of chasing this in different like all agent applications, and we kind of see this is the direction we need to go in for browser agents, is kind of self-healing determinism, but having the AI there to pick up the pieces when it inevitably fails because things change. So yeah, that's one of the other kind of pathways we're chasing at the moment.
Oh, nice. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. I'll keep my eyes peeled to the change log.
Yep.
All right. Well, just looking at time here, we'll wrap up soon. Maybe just kind of a last sort of round of question. Obviously talking a lot about the here and now and what's brought Asteroid up to today, and obviously what's ahead for them. I think more in general, even outside the scope of browser agents, would you say that there's anything in the AI industry at whole that the community should have more attention on, more eyes on? Is there like a concept or a trend or something that you maybe see is worth more attention?
I think one thing that we've noticed is that um, jumping from your one shot chat GPT, yes, it can solve this task. And we're a lot of times like when I tell my friends about Astra, they're like, oh yeah, I was able to do that in chat GPT. What are you doing differently? But it's more of this like having the infrastructure there so that a company can fully integrate. Like you're not gonna use ChatGPT to productionize your product, right? You can use it for some testing, but I think what you'll start to see is more and more companies, especially in the agent space, kind of doing this end-to-end infrastructure um, for these agent applications, so that they can just fully adopt it, make it part of their own products, um, so they don't have to build it out themselves. So yeah, like ChatGPT and like these other kind of high-level one-shot use cases prove that the technology's there. Might not be as reliable as people want. And it's about these like kind of companies like Asteroid to kind of be the golden standard for how do you then use this technology in production.
Yeah, I think I'd maybe couple that more broadly. I feel like more people need to know it exists. Um, in a weird way, I know it's a very simplistic answer, but I think I've been surprised by the number of people who just don't have any idea about the concept of having AI interact with the browser at that level and being able to replace. Our goal is that allowing masses and masses of people to effectively work on non-repetitive stuff because we handle all the repetitive tasks. And I wonder how many people out there in the world don't know that this is a possibility, and the 4 hours they spend out of an 8-hour day just doing the exact same thing could be automated so that they could do something useful.
Yeah. Yeah, just to add on to it, like where I was thinking with this question, and maybe I could see it being used in this, is the concept of like swarms. Like you have your mastermind, and it's like spinning up multiple sub agents.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's bringing that to the masses, but still keeping it constructed in a way of, someone could give that very vague prompt of fill out this form, but then I don't know, maybe 10 agents figure out what do they mean by that, right? Like 3 figure out what is this form even about, 2 look at your data, and 5 unpack the form and try to fill it out. So some combination thereof, get it there.
There we go. That's an idea to add to the product, I think.
Yeah. If you guys can do swarms, let me know. All right, awesome. Well, gentlemen, again, thanks for joining us today on the podcast. You've been great. I've many more questions to ask about Asteroid, but we'll have to take those to Slack sometime. But yeah, thanks for being here today,
Sure.
Ed.
Thank you very
Tom.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It's been a lot of fun. I'd
Yeah,
say.
yeah. No, you guys have been great. Definitely, I've learned a lot more about Asteroid in this past hour here. So, yeah, looking forward to what's ahead.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.